thank you all very much for joining us for what I hope will be an informative and useful occasion and a good opportunity to network virtually. I'm Anne Lim, I'm the Independent Business Chair of the Innovation Corridor, and we are the UK's leading science tech corridor. You've got an array of people from along that corridor to speak to you this afternoon and to share ideas with you and tell you about the fantastic things they are doing, and to help us along the way with that. Chris Paddock has agreed to chair the session. So I would just end this introduction and welcome by saying we're absolutely delighted to be doing this. I think when John introduced one of these, I should have said you can't see John McGill on the screen. He's delegated that responsibility to me, even though my hair and my highlights are in much worse condition than John's. So, but John has been, and you will all know him, the panelists anyway, and many of you perhaps participating. John's been the director of the Innovation Corridor since it started under a different name, but he's led it and propelled it to where it is now, and it's in a very, very good and exciting place actually, as increasingly along this corridor from the London end of it, right the way through Harlow and Stevenage, for those of you that know the UK picture, through Essex and Hertfordshire, up to Cambridge and Peterborough, all the companies, all the real estate developments, all the academic research, all the housing and planning developments that are going on there, notwithstanding COVID-19, create a most vibrant cluster of exciting activity and opportunity, with a brand now that is increasingly economically recognised as a geography that can keep the UK powered as we get ourselves out of these very, very difficult times. And I haven't even mentioned Brexit. So with that, I will hand over to Chris. We've now got 83 on, Chris, and I'll let you take us through the session, and I'll disappear until the end. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Anne, and good afternoon, everyone. It's a thrill to be able to chair this session with speakers from around the world, projects that I've been interested in for a number of years, and to reflect upon the role that placemaking plays within innovation. My name's Chris Paddock, and I am Director of Economy and Place, small consultancy called PRD. I will reflect on a few bits of work that we've done in relation to this shortly, but before I do that, I would like each of our panel members to introduce themselves. So I will, I'll go in the order on my screen. So Sylvie, if you're able to go first, please.
Sure, absolutely. I'll say good morning, everyone, since it's 9 a.m. here in Philadelphia. My name is Sylvie Gallier Howard. I'm the Acting Director of Commerce for the City of Philadelphia. And I had an opportunity to meet John and a number of his colleagues in Munich. I think that was last year. How time flies, and I'm pleased to be here today and a representative from America.
Excellent. And next on my screen is Tatiana. If you would please, Tatiana.
I'm going to unmute, so I thought that might be better. Hi, so yes, I'm Tatiana Bartram-Keat. I am a partner at Q&Q. We are a family office, and we look for private investments, but specifically for public-private partnerships, social housing, but innovations. I am deeply involved in anything to do with ecology and the tech for ecology, and that is where our investors at the moment are very excited and leaning towards. So thank you very much, and I look forward to the session.
Okay, and Anthony?
Yes, good afternoon. I'm Anthony Downs. I'm Estate Director for Gascoyne Estates. For those of you that don't know us, perhaps know us better as Hatfield House or Hatfield Park Estate. We're a historic landowner situated broadly halfway along the corridor, so right in the heart of Hertfordshire, central Hertfordshire, between London and Cambridge. We've been here for quite a while, about 400 years. So history is a large part of what we stand for, but that's not to say we're focusing on the past. It's very much all about the future. And we've been engaging for the last few years in terms of how Hertfordshire might evolve, and specifically how we can play a role as a landowner in placemaking and providing homes and indeed employment space and infrastructure for the future.
Thank you, Anthony. And Sally Ann?
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Sally Ann Forsyth. I'm Chief Executive Officer of Stevenage Bioscience Catalyst, and we're responsible for developing the scientific, the life sciences and advanced therapeutics cluster based on the GSK park in Stevenage.
Fantastic. And Carolina?
Everyone, so my name is Carolina Villa. I'm actually talking to you from the Netherlands. I'm part of the team of Planet Bio, which is an open innovation hub focused on industrial biotech, and I'd be happy to tell you more in my talk.
Okay, and then finally, Richard.
Good afternoon, everyone. Richard Fagg from Vinci UK Developments. We're development partner with the Harlow Borough Council for the Harlow Science Park. My role is there to lead that scheme through its nurturing stage into a flourishing business park, science park.
Amazing. Thank you, Richard. As I said, I work for a small sort of research-based economic consultancy, and we've done quite a lot of work looking at the innovation corridor, and we've sort of last year, I think, successfully pulled together an evidence base that showed that this was the most innovative corridor within the UK, which gave it some global standing. And in doing that, and in a lot of our other work, we often come back to this concept of innovation districts, places that successfully balance the need for strong physical assets alongside good innovative companies, and also the right people and the right interface between those people to help places develop successfully as innovative ecosystems. Now, off the back of the research that we've done, our esteemed hosts today have undertaken a small amount of research talking to people within the corridor about what makes a successful innovation district. And I have a quick slide of their findings, which I shall share with you right now. So this is kind of what people within the corridor are saying is important to creating places where innovation is natural. They talk about the importance of creating an ecosystem, a curated cluster of related organisations who can work together. So good sort of basic agglomeration economics, but also talk about the importance of talents and getting the right people with the right skills in the right place, with science very much underpinning that from the point of view of biotech and life sciences that we're going to talk about today. Connections are important because you need to bring those people together and enable them to connect physically, but also, particularly in the times that we're in at the moment, digitally. And then finally, the amenity is important, but often overlooked. So having the right facilities to enable people to come together and collaborate. And in reflecting on that, I think one of the things that comes through is you can build these wonderful, nice science parks and great shiny buildings. You can bring in the best educational institutions, but that just doesn't work without the people and the connections and the social elements that make good innovation districts. So I wanted to ask Sylvie to start. Tell us about Philadelphia, which is an example that I'm really, really interested in. But Sylvie, before you do start, I think it would be really useful for us as participants to hear about how you're adapting and the current experience that you guys have within the US and the challenges that you're facing from a point of view of COVID-19, but also the unrest within your cities at the moment, and how that might be affecting the way that you work and evolve your models in the immediate future. So Sylvia, I'll hand over to you. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Chris. So obviously, we're going through a historic time right now. I like to think on the positive side that this is a turning point for the better for us. And I guess what I would say is between the pandemic and then the recent unrest that is thankfully now calmer and more peaceful, we have seen really our ability to innovate and adapt but we've also it's really uncovered the disparities that exist in this country and in the city of Philadelphia, in our structures. Some things that we've seen that are positive. I just talked to our director of the airport, the Philadelphia airport, which falls under the Commerce Department. And we're seeing an increase in cargo. In fact, a lot of pharmaceuticals from the UK, apparently, which I found, interesting and great. So, there are things like that. Lots of investment happening in life sciences companies because we have so much cell and gene therapy, as an ecosystem here, and people are working against the clock on a vaccine. So certainly a spin on the normal times, but I do think that crisis breeds opportunity and innovation. And while it's been devastating in a lot of ways, and certainly the systemic racism and what we're seeing in terms of lives lost is absolutely devastating and heartbreaking. I think that these are times that will lead to, I think that it'll be truly a turning point for our country and for the world, honestly. So I'll leave it at that, but thank you for asking me about that.
So Sylvie, if you want to go straight into your presentation now.
Absolutely. All right. I'm going to share my screen here. Okay, everyone can see my screen?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, great. All right, so I'm going to share with you about how Philadelphia is a leader in life sciences. This is a photo of our skyline in downtown Philadelphia. All right, there we go. And this is an aerial photo of the city skyline. So Philadelphia was once known as the workshop of the world. We for decades, our economy was rooted in manufacturing and chemicals. And then much like other major cities on the Northeast corridor, there was a major decline in deindustrialization of our cities. And we went through a very difficult period with a lot of population loss and job loss. And so the city looked for other industries to support and revive, and the chemical industry was a natural precursor to the pharmaceutical industry, which gave birth to our modern life sciences and biotech thriving economy. Alongside 100+ hospitals in the region, we were really primed for this industry, and now life sciences and especially cell and gene therapy have become leading clusters for the city of Philadelphia. As you I'm sure all know, Philadelphia is a city of first. This is Independence Hall. Philadelphia, in addition to being the birthplace of American democracy in 1776, we also have a long list of firsts. I'll just go through a few. First computer, the ENIAC computer, a very large computer created by IBM. The first U.S. hospital, formed in 1751, so even before the birth of our nation. And we've been a global medical hub since the 1700s. So clearly, innovation is in our city's DNA. Over the last few decades, we've helped to harness the innovative spirit of our city towards the life sciences industry. 1 out of every 6 doctors in the U.S. is trained in the Philadelphia region, and 80% of U.S. pharmaceutical and biotech companies have a presence in the region, 80%. At the forefront, we've been at the forefront of healthcare since the nation's first hospital opened, and the Philadelphia region has grown to be one of the strongest life sciences sectors in the country. So this is a photo of our Schuylkill River right in the middle of our city. We have 2 major rivers, the Delaware River and the Schuylkill River in our city. And Philadelphia, we are blessed by our ideal location. We are within approximately an hour-and-a-half train ride both of New York City and Washington, D.C. And I know John liked it when I said in the last presentation that we like to think that we have our wonderful suburbs to the north and south, but we're sort of the more accommodating and accessible and affordable city in the middle, nestled between those 2 great financial and political capitals of the country. And I also want to mention we are a gateway to Europe. just 5-6 hours away from Europe, many international flights, and also within a short flight to Canada, and a 5-hour flight actually to California, about equal as going to Europe. This is some of our infrastructure. So some of these are renderings. These are areas. The Navy Yard is an old naval base that was closed in the late 90s and was reopened as a campus for innovation, R&D. 10,000 jobs were lost when that naval yard was closed. We now have 15,000 jobs at that naval yard, and hundreds of companies have opened up, many life sciences companies. University City is a neighborhood in Philadelphia that is adjacent. It's really right, the location of the University of Pennsylvania, and Drexel and the University of the Sciences are all there in the University City. And this is certainly the innovation hub in terms of life sciences for the city. Pennovation is an innovation center and co-working space that was developed several years ago, also right there in the University City area. And Schuylkill Yards is a new development that's going to develop millions of square feet of new buildings and space for, including space for life sciences. That is one of the benefits of being a city that was developed for 2.5 million people, and we currently have 1.6 million people. And at our peak, we did have over 2 million people when we were the industrial, the workshop of the world. So there is actually a lot of developable space in our city. And we know that that's crucial to the growth of companies in this sector because of the importance of co-location with universities and hospitals. In fact, the Navy Yard and University City were both areas that we proposed to Amazon when we did our HQ2 bid, because they needed 8 million square feet, which I believe is about 700,000 square meters of space. So clearly there's a lot of space to develop in those areas. These are just photos of, on the left is GlaxoSmithKline's interior and exterior. These are both at the Navy Yard. On the right-hand corner at the top is an aerial photo of the Navy Yard. And the bottom right-hand corner is Urban Outfitters in the interior. You can see that's in a historic old building in the Navy Yard. And the headquarters of Urban Outfitters is in Philadelphia, by the way. This is a photo of our diverse talent. So Philadelphia, one of the highlights of Philadelphia, and one of the reasons it's a draw is because we have over 100 universities and colleges in the region. I named Drexel and University of Pennsylvania. We also have Princeton, within less than an hour's drive from Philadelphia, and numerous other colleges as well. We have over 50% of students that come to study in the Philadelphia region stay in Philadelphia because it is so affordable and because of the lifestyle that we provide. One in 6 doctors in the US are trained in Philadelphia. We have 7 medical schools, 22 schools of nursing, and the only dual medical degree with an accreditation in the world. Philadelphia has some of the nation's premier educational and health institutions, like the University of Pennsylvania Health System, one of the best children's hospitals in the world, Jefferson Health System, and the Fox Chase Cancer Center. We've been named in many lists as one of the top 10 US life sciences cities. At 32%, Philadelphia now has the largest share of education and health services employment of any major city in the United States. And as I mentioned, 80% of US pharmaceutical companies are located within a 2-hour drive of Philadelphia. Over $10 billion in R&D per year, over $1.4 billion in venture capital in 2019 alone. That's top 10 in the US, and the 4th best venture capital returns in the US. I also want to mention that we really prize our international connections and have a strategy around doing more business development with other cities in the world. That includes the UK, Northern Ireland, Canada, Japan, Germany, and other cities as well around the world. Philadelphia is at the forefront of many breakthrough discoveries. In the last few years, we've really taken off in terms of gene therapy and cell therapy. We have the first FDA-approved gene therapy, which was done by Spark Therapeutics, which was recently purchased by Roche. and this is a cure for a form of blindness. We also have the first FDA-approved cell therapy. Dr. Carl June, who is a leader in cell therapy, and there's also a cure for, Spark has a cure for the same disease that killed Senator John McCain last year, and this is a cure for solid cell tumor therapy. So a cure for solid tumor cancer, which is just, obviously that is something that will be beneficial to the world. And this is a photo of the bridge that connects us to New Jersey. And I just want to stress what Chris said about the importance of, we've certainly seen the importance of an ecosystem that is close to academic centers of excellence, talent, great hospitals, and diversity as being core to fostering innovation and investment. And this is, to end, a photo of the JFK Parkway, Ben Franklin Parkway, and this was actually based off a design of the Champs-Élysées, and the growth of R&D in these high-tech sectors will also spur economic need for supporting industries like manufacturing and market research. So we think that the future is bright, and I think this photo helps to show that. And I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to tell you a bit about our life sciences sector. So thank you.
Thank you, Sylvie. That was lovely. That felt like going on a little holiday. That was much needed. So next, we're going to hear for just a reminder. You can, if you want to post questions in the Q&A, we've got a few for Sylvie that we'll take at the end of the talk. But I'll hand over to Sally-Ann Forsyth now, who's going to talk to us about Biocatalyst in Stevenage.
Let me just look for my presentation, which I have to say it's disappeared for the moment, but I will find it again. Just uploading now. Seems to be quite a big presentation, so it's taken a while to upload. Is that uploading?
I can't see anything yet.
Ross, I know you've got a copy if you want to upload the version that I sent you. Or if you want to move to another screen.
Why don't we get Ross? Ross can upload your version. Why don't we ask Carolina to speak now, and she can talk about the her experience in Delft, and then we'll come back to you, Sally-Ann, and we can work via Ross's screen, if that's okay with you, Carolina.
Can you all see my screen now? Great.
We can.
Perfect. Then I'll go. So I already introduced myself. My name is Carolina Villa. The picture that you see here now is a beautiful picture of our biotech campus in Delft. So it's really interesting because what you see is a very industrial setting. We have 2 production plants in there, research and development as well. And in the back, you see the city of Delft, which is 45 minutes from Schiphol, 10 minutes from The Hague, 15 minutes from Rotterdam, very well located with also multiple universities nearby. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about our journey as a team, what we've been through, the things we're now struggling with, because we're a very young innovation hub. So a little bit about who we are. So we are an open innovation hub for industrial biotechnology. So what I mean with industrial biotechnology is using the tools of biotech to produce chemicals, enzymes, fuel and materials. We are very much focused on scale up. This is a little bit where we think our strong point is in research and development and in education. And when I say scale up, I mean we are an allocation where not only we do research, but there's also space for piloting, but also for industrial production. Now we have a growing community of companies active in the same field. And we try really hard to enable these companies to access talent, knowledge, network, but also funding opportunities. Now, our core offer is very much based on exploiting the infrastructure so far. So we offer lab space, we offer office space, but we also offer space for, like I said, piloting and production. So that's one important point that I want you to keep in mind, because that's actually one of our struggles so far. How else can we use the space that we have, and how else can we generate further revenue? Now, we started at the end of 2018, building on a very strong basis though. So the site that I showed you used to be a DSM site. We're building on 150 years of biotechnology history. So 150 years ago, the first yeast factory was started at that location, a factory that is still running. Back then it was producing baker's yeast, and now we're producing yeast extract as an ingredient. So for you based in the UK, that goes into your Marmite. But a little bit of a sneak peek on the companies that are now on site. So we now have 3 startups, Meetable, DAB, Spectrax. We have 3 joint ventures of DSM, Avancia, Veramaris, and Canola Pro. We have 2 corporates, DSM and Centrient, and we have 1 service organization, which is the bioprocess pilot facility. And next to that, we have a few service providers like AXS or Rautenberg that support our tenants. So that is just a short intro of who we are. But now I'm just going to give you a little bit more insight of what we've gone through. So when we started this a little bit still as a project back in 2018, the first thing we did was to ask ourselves what makes a good innovation hub. So those are some of the points that Chris, you touched upon earlier. And this was something that we found on literature, 10 points, similar to what you just said: access to talent, access to a network that stimulates innovation, easy to work, makes life easier as well. You get access to capital or support for that, flexible, you have support to settle. So that's what we found. And the next thing we did was, okay, where are we in those 10 points? And back in 2018, there were things where it was very clear that we needed to make an improvement, which, and we also needed to understand to which extent can we actually improve? Because like I told you before, we are based in an industrial site where there is production, where we need to take care of safety because we have permits covering the whole site, production permits. So there were things where we were limited. Luckily, when we did that assessment, we thought, in most of the things, we know that we can make a significant improvement. And that's the reason why we actually decided to start this journey. So that was around April 2018. DSM said, okay, we want to invest into turning this site into an open innovation ecosystem. Reasoning behind that was as well, DSM said, if we want to grow in biotechnology, we cannot do this alone. So in April 2018, we said, yes, we're going to invest on this. In August, the first members of the team came on board, so a few of them are actually in the line with me. And when we started, the first thing that we did was, okay, how can we differentiate ourselves? Because maybe you've been to the Netherlands. The Netherlands is a very small country. We have so many innovation hubs. And the idea is not to compete, but to complement each other. So we actually try to we made an effort to scope ourselves well, and we started visiting multiple other campuses and talking to people. What is your strong point? How are you contributing to the overall innovation ecosystem? And that's also one of the things where I touched upon before. One of the advantages that we have in our site, it's really the scale-up part. Because yes, we have labs, yes, we have offices, but we also have not only space for factories, but we have a lot of expertise on how to get from the lab to the industrial scale. Now, in March 2018 was the first time that our tenants started to move in. That's because we were refurbishing an old building, which is where the companies are based now. So only in March, the first company started to move in. In June, we had our first validation lab, so a startup event that we had with that we did together with Yes Delft. Yes Delft is the incubator from the Delft University of Technology. In October was the official opening, so that's when we said to the world, here we are. And at that point, then we had already been talking with multiple partners about how to organize this. So this shouldn't be something that was a DSM alone thing. We wanted to involve people or partners from education and from the public sector. So in October 2018, they said, yes, we commit. We're going to shape this into something that it's adding value for the region and beyond. In November 2019, we started the Campus Fund. So DSM, together with two other partners, started the Campus Fund. And now in June, so as we speak, we can fully announce that we're going to be a non-profit organization funded by 5 different partners: DSM, TU Delft, the province of South Holland, the municipality of Delft, and Innovation Quarter, which is the development agency of the province. So that's a little bit about our journey. But to be honest, we are a young hub. We have our struggles. Like I told you at the beginning, we are now in a phase where we are exploiting infrastructure, and we would actually like to generate additional revenue streams besides that. So we're now very busy structuring our services and to make them valuable also for our tenants. We want to know also how to make better use of subsidies to fund ourselves, or maybe make better use of different incubation, acceleration, or challenge programs to sell even to other parties. And to be honest, the current pandemic has also set us back a bit. So when we talk about a hub for innovation, where we rely so much on that physical proximity, and most of us are not even at the office yet, back, then that makes it a bit difficult. So how do we keep our community engaged and we keep developing that sense of belonging? And now, we've also had experience with a lot of startups that have been affected by the pandemic. So how do we build in flexibility for them and try to support them in a way that is also not harming us in the long run? Also the same thing. So like I told you before, we are supported by public organizations that are putting public money into funding our nonprofit. And with the current situation, that has been a difficult discussion, to be honest. One of the other things that we're doing now is, okay, we started with, we have a flat rate, you come in, you're welcome, just settle. But now it's a little bit like, should we differentiate a little bit per segment, per space, what we charge? So that's also something that we're going through now. And these are just some questions that I'm posing very openly because it would be very nice to discuss them with this audience. But because of time, then I'll just leave it up to there. If you want to know more of what I just told you, and for some reason we don't have time during the Q&A, just feel free to send an email there, just the info@planetbio. all of our team members see that email, so it's very easy. If I don't answer your question, somebody else will. My number is there as well, so feel free to contact me.
Fantastic. Thank you, Carolina. If you could stop sharing your screen, then I believe that Sally-Ann, you've got your presentation. Stevenage Biocatalyst ready to go.
Share screen, and if it doesn't work, we've got it back up.
Here we have.
Okay, how's that looking? Is it going full screen yet?
That's all good. Yes, you're ready to go, Sally-Ann.
Okay, very good. I'm just going to minimize pictures here. Very good. Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm delighted to have the opportunity to tell you a little bit about Stevenage Bioscience Catalyst, or SBC. And I was asked also to say, what do I think it takes to grow a successful cluster? We've seen a great example here from Sylvie of an innovation campus based in a city, so a city-based campus. And we've seen from Carolina an industrial hub in innovation, innovation hub there. And what I would like to talk about today is a campus-based approach. So Stevenage Bioscience Catalyst, SBC, we really, for those that don't know where Stevenage is, we're actually at the centre of the Golden Triangle between Oxford, Cambridge and London, and our focus is all about advanced therapeutics. Our mission really is to create a globally recognisable ecosystem. I'm just checking we're in the right phase here, that brings together the academics, biotechs and pharma, and that's really putting together the innovation supply chain. And then we wrap around that networks, facilities and expertise that support our companies to grow. And our focus is very much, not so much on the research end, although we do cover that, but actually on translation and commercialisation. And that makes us complementary to the research centres of Oxford, Cambridge and London. Our funding started in 2010, 38 million funding, about 50% from GSK and Wellcome, and the other 50% from government. We're actually a limited company, limited by guarantee by our two members. That's the Wellcome Trust and GSK. But in fact, we're actually not for profit, and any surplus that we make, we invest back into the campus. So moving on. So my screen seems to have stuck again. So who's here? Well, the campus itself, we've got just over 4,300 employees. About 75% are with GSK and 25% with other organisations on the campus. And we've got about 1,000 employees. And I just picked out some key examples here. We've got the Cell and Gene Catapult, one of, I believe, 11 in the UK, which all have different themes. Our theme is cell and gene, and that helps the translation and commercialisation of cell and gene technologies. We've got LifeArc, which is the Medical Research Council Tech Transfer Unit, and they help translation of very early stage or academic projects. We've got Apollo Investment, early stage investment, Cytiva, who were formerly GE. They have a tech lab where they bring their latest technology. Our occupiers can use that technology for free. And that's a great showcase for everyone, really helps our companies. And then an academic lab hotel, whereby our, again, academics can come and have short-term projects where they use translational facilities to test out their ideas. And they really bring the innovative base to our organizations. On top of that, we've got students and apprentices, about 300 at any one time. And I've shown here a couple of our buildings, the incubator and the accelerator. We also just opened in December the Spark, Grow On Space, and also we're opening mid-2021 Sycamore House, again, further Grow On Space. But our buildings are full and we've got a long, long waiting list. So we're now looking at further developments. If we now move on to what do we actually do to support innovation and commercialization, you can see here we've got the pharma pipeline. We've got the corporates at the top there. Our main one, of course, is GSK, and they understand the routes to market, how to get, particularly in our pipeline, we look at how to use clinical trials, how to get the products out to the ultimate client, the patient. And we're putting together that whole pipeline. We have the corporates, then we have the startups and the scale-ups. Oh, I've just lost my presentation.
I think it stuck, Sally-Ann, so Ross is going to take over and pick up where you were.
Very good.
Okay.
My apologies, I don't know why it's being problematic. Can you see the slides, or shall I just keep chatting? I was talking about the pharma pipeline. So we bring together the corporates, the routes to market, the startups and the scale-ups who understand the innovation focus. They've got a real focus on the bottom line, both financially and time-wise. So they're highly innovative and entrepreneurial. And then we bring them together with the academics who focus on the early stage research. And they really pump prime the whole innovation pipeline. To that, as SBC, we add facilities and equipment, so shared equipment either for early stage or later stage manufacturing, and that's some of it's free and some of it's on a pay-as-you-go basis. I have to say the small companies always say they have no time and no money, so that really attracts them. We provide training and mentoring, that's both formal and informal. So formally we have a number of sessions, perhaps IT training or digital technology or those sorts of things. And then we have mentoring, for example, and networking, where I host our CEOs club, for example, for them to share their learnings. And then finally, access to finance is really important for our companies. We're very lucky. We have 3 finance houses on the campus at for different stages, but also off campus, we have about 24 venture capital organizations that we work with, about half are US based and half are European based. And then when we put all of that together, we say, well, how are our companies doing? And I've got a slide, I don't know if you can see my slide, but my slide shows the cumulative investment in our companies since 2012. And it sweeps up to show that in total, our companies have raised over 1 billion of sterling. Of that, about 87% is in cell and gene technologies. So that's been a very, very investable area. And if we look at 2019 alone, our companies raised 300 million sterling. And that makes Stevenage Bioscience Catalyst one of the leading campuses in the UK, if not the leading campus for equity investment in the life sciences. And why have we attracted all this funding? Well, I would say cell and gene technology, as we heard earlier, it's curative, it's a very exciting area, and there's a lot of investment going in. We've created a very supportive environment, and our focus is on delivery and getting those commercial items out of the door. So we're actually running at the moment, the campus is running because we're getting products out of the door to patients. And that makes us very, lowers the risk level, which makes the attractiveness for investors go up. And I'd just like to move to my final slide. I don't know if you can see that. What I've got is a number of boxes with successful clusters. The top 3 are really the ones I've spoken about already, which absolutely the ecosystem is key, bringing together mature companies with startups and academics. They need funding. We start them off on public grants as much as we can do, and then they move on to private funding, seed and VC. The specialist facilities, as we mentioned, has to mirror the growth of the companies, but it's important to have that range access on the campus. If I then move down the left-hand side and we look at some of the more scientific-based requirements. So sector strength, we focused in on a sector that's growing and it's of global significance, but we're also very, very aware of the companies that we let come onto the campus. We have a very strict gate policy that only IP-rich, that's intellectual property-rich companies come on. They have a real focus on what they're doing and that they'll be collaborative. So we have a very strict gate policy, so very few service suppliers. And skilled employees is everything. So as we mentioned before, training and mentoring, but there have to be opportunities for career development. So if you have a number of companies, that gives opportunities for employees and any partners or other people within their group. And of course, housing and schools is important to attract people to the area. The companies need to be able to grow, so room for growth. They don't want to shut down and move elsewhere because that would be downtime and they would lose employees. Supply chain, you want to be next to people in your supply chain group. So you could say competitors, but I always think of collaborators and your other customers and suppliers. And then finally, I think location is extraordinarily important. It's the one thing you can't do anything about, but it can be a very prestigious location, which you can play to your advantage. But infrastructure, despite that, is the key one. Infrastructure, both IT, which mine isn't doing too well today, but also transport, air, road, rail. And leveraging lifestyle. We're seeing a lot of interest either in working in cities or not working in cities or working more on the coast. So actually leveraging those kind of things I think are very important to a cluster. And with that, I don't know how many of those slides you were able to see, but I'll just finish there. Thank you.
We'll certainly share the slides afterwards so people can take a look and reflect on that. Just the final presenter we have here is Richard from Harlow Science Park. So I'll hand straight over to you, Richard.
Thank you, Chris. Let's hope I get this tech right. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Thank you for that introduction, Chris. Whilst Harlow has a long history and pedigree in science and technology with the creation of fibre optics with Charles Kao a wee while ago, like some but unlike many others, Harlow Science Park is at the beginning of its journey. It's a fledgling science park in comparison to many others. But our journey begins with a recognition that we have so much around us and so many assets to build upon. Firstly, with our presence within the innovation corridor itself, our status as being part of an enterprise zone. Clearly, Public Health England's strategic decision to relocate itself to Harlow for its headquarters is a significant step. But with KO Park, with other businesses such as Raytheon, Arrow Electronics and Teva Pharmaceuticals, there is so much to build upon with existing businesses and to attract others. Also, we've got fantastic data connectivity. Our first building that I'll show you in a moment is wired platinum status. And importantly, and in keeping, interestingly, with the research that the Innovation Corridor has done, it matches with, or it dovetails nicely with Harlow's own ambition, with 23,000 new homes being built in the area, all complementing employers who want to retain those staff and attract that talent to itself. This slide simply shows our master plan. We have 25 acres with a further 10 acres for potential expansion in the future, subject to agreement. But on those 25 acres, we have a master planned consent for approximately 500,000 square feet of science space, and really usefully, a local development order in place. That enables subsequent phases to be delivered through the planning process in 28 days, providing it's in keeping with the framework that's been established. It gives us, very rapid to site access for delivery. So in terms of where we are currently, these are our Nexus and Arise buildings. Nexus is at the top, 3 floors, 35,000 square feet of grade A science space that has been acquired by Harlow District Council, and Arise, 25,000 square feet over 2 floors that's been taken by the Anglia Ruskin University as its own incubator space. Phase 2, our Modus buildings, approximately 55,000 square feet, started on site early this year with completion due in February next year, 2021. Focused on advanced manufacturing and medtech, and here's another CGI of that ambition. Terrific accommodation, fit for purpose for new businesses and existing businesses to take occupation within the corridor at affordable rates. But I was talking about the journey and how early we are in our history. Whilst in the early days we were focused, not unsurprisingly, on designing, on getting planning, on taking ourselves through the delivery process of creating that momentum of investment and reputation, we've had to take a step back, and similar to what Carolina was saying, where are we? And we've elevated our thinking as to, what is the place that we are trying to create? What is its identity, and that brand destination that we aspire to? And so as part of that process, we had a number of workshops with a wide range of stakeholders. And the next 3 slides simply are just a download of the words, the expressions, the language that they use. And what's on the page now will be no surprise to anyone. Words such as innovation, technology, entrepreneurialism, etc., you'd imagine would be common across all our facilities. But there was a clear focus reflecting on the change in employees and employers' business expectation of what a good what a good environment is in terms of its quality and the experience that it gives to its staff. Of course, staff retention and attraction is a huge challenge, and of our operational costs, typically 90% of the business's costs are its people. And so we spent a lot of time talking and thinking how we were going to react to that. But equally, we are part of Harlow. We don't want to be at an arm's length. We are not in the town centre, but very, very close to it. We're not a greenfield site, effectively. We were in an existing community, and we want to be part of that. We want to be open and permeable. And so that brought together our thinking. And whilst, of course, the location, the accessibility, the quality, the fitness for purpose of space, and the affordability of space is important to every business, so are these the ethos, the attitude, the approach that the park will take. And so we have these 3 emerging pillars that we are adopting. Firstly, that being one of a human-centered facility, science park. Human-centered in respect of the talent that we're trying to attract to and retain at the park, and to be part of the community and live in and around it. If I reflect on what COVID's done to me, my quality of life has leapt in terms of avoiding those long commutes into a city unnecessarily. But also the quality of the environment that we're installing, those reflect and providing opportunity for being a place of well-being and wellness. And as I said before, to be playing that part, open and transparent in the region, being part of the community and contributing to it and the town's growth as well. Also in terms of being exploratory, we believe we have to remain open-minded in terms of the approach we take, in terms of the facilities and the support we offer the tenants and occupiers and businesses as they arrive, and to be able to reflect and respond to those changing needs and the drivers for that change. All this needs to be accounted for as our journey progresses. But then lastly, we want to be a place of convergence with like many others, and particularly Sally Ann and Carolina, who mentioned this themselves, but that story of collaboration, of complementarity at many levels, at a Harlow level, with the existing businesses and new businesses coming to the area, such as Public Health England, but Tiva and Raytheon, but also at a Harlow Science Park level. We want to encourage collaboration and a sense of community on the park itself, and foster those casual collisions between one another. But very importantly, and to give a footnote to our hosts, as part of the Innovation Corridor, we are all part of the science community, and we want to build upon that. Whilst, yes, I'm sure at the micro level we do compete, we are all part of an Innovation Corridor community, and that is leading the way in the United Kingdom, and let's foster that and build upon that with the likes of UXPAR, One Nucleus and others. And then, of course, finally, at a UK science level, to promote the benefits of the UK as a destination. And so finally, bringing to the point to the challenges, I mean, COVID has been well documented, and some have spoken about today. We are working our way through that in many ways in a similar fashion. But we are now addressing our question of place, brand and identity, and we have an evolving story about that narrative, what we want to be and what that brings as benefits. But with that, to be true to our human-centered pillars, we are now trying to create that place animation and personality stories, that we give clear phasing plans and ambitions to those that are coming, so they understand what's going to be there when they arrive, but equally that story of evolution as we continue to ensure that it's delivered, that it's vibrant, that it succeeds. We're listening to feedback, but also that it's viable and we can react to some of the choices. So at that point, I'd like to thank you all for your time and attention. And if there are any questions and queries there afterwards, there's some contact details for you as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard. Guess what, gang? We're going to overrun a little bit, so hopefully that's all right for our panelists. I'm going to hand over now just for a very brief response from Anthony and Tatiana. They're obviously the people who are invested in these places and enabling a lot of the exciting things that we see to happen. So, Anthony, if I could start with you, just a couple of quick minutes on response to that, please.
Yes, thank you. Well, as ever, really, it's sort of fascinating and heartening to hear others' experiences. I mean, there are striking parallels, but certainly our present engagement at Hatfield. Richard, you said you're early on in the trajectory at Harlow. I mean, I think we're still several years behind you. We've yet to break ground and are still very much in the planning process. But that said, I think there were some key themes which came out of all of those presentations, which for me certainly cement many of our own thoughts. And if I were just to skip through those relatively briefly, I think collaboration, the need for differentiation, but the ability for sites, occupiers, investors, key stakeholders to work together, absolutely key. The whole backdrop of placemaking, and I think that's an increasingly perhaps abused term these days, but nevertheless one which is absolutely important, namely the point that this isn't just about creating jobs or employment spaces, but rather high quality environments where we're talking about housing, schools, infrastructure. And if we're talking about infrastructure, that often obviously it goes beyond what I call it's going beyond the red line. So it's not always at the gift of the landowner, the owner or the investor. It requires buy-in from government, both at a local and national level. The need for coordination, and I think without plugging the innovation corridor too overtly, I think organisations such as Innovation Corridor, the need for a champion or an organisation to really help build the brand, provide a coherent backdrop or narrative, absolutely key. Because it's worth remembering, although these webinars or perhaps more conventional events are wonderful, not everybody out there is always as enthusiastic as ourselves. And therefore it's important that we can provide a coherent message to the outside world, that we can draw together key stakeholders and provide a clear voice in terms of what we as a collective perhaps require from others. So I'd certainly leave that. And as part and parcel of that, really, how can we pull data and information? Some good information being shared today, but are there other work streams where we can perhaps come together as a community and collectively undertake or commission work which will assist us all? I think I'll probably leave it there. Conscious time is short. But,
okay.
I'd just like to say I think it was a very thought-provoking collection of presentations. Certainly, it's left me re-energized, committed to our own plans, and yeah, thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot, Anthony. And Tatiana, your responses to what you've heard?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that we've talked about sort of these smaller clusters sort of everywhere. I think it's important to actually make these places somewhere interesting to live so that there's a strong quality of life there. So people actually have the interest of moving there and staying there, so they don't have to travel elsewhere for their fun or their schooling or whatever it is. So I think it's really important when we're looking at this type of thing, and I think Anthony was saying pretty much the same thing as I am, that we're looking to build communities here. So there has to be a place for everyone involved. So that's one of the main things that we look at in terms of when we're looking to make investments. We want to actually see that it's not just going to be sort of a town that lives during the day and then it's dead afterwards. It needs to actually have something more than that. And I think that a lot of the things that I've heard today really do show that this is something that people want. I think it's just about understanding how to make that happen. And I think that's something that we really do need to focus on.
Great. Okay, that's fantastic. I'm going to take a few questions from the Q&A now, and I will try and merge some together so that we get some answers. If we don't get answers to all the questions, then I'll endeavour to follow up with the panellists after we've finished talking here today. One of the things that Tatiana, you've just mentioned, which I think is particularly interesting, is how you configure the spaces in between the buildings. The sort of, someone in the questions referred to them as the sort of third spaces, the bits in between, to enable campuses, science parks to be as accessible and open as possible. I'd be interested to hear maybe from Sally-Anne on how you've sort of planned for that in Stevenage, but also from Carolina and your experience in the Netherlands as well.
Okay. So I should say, first of all, we actually are a secure campus because of the nature of the work that we do. But when you come into the campus is open and everybody can go anywhere other than research labs, which of course have got restrictions in them because there are health and safety issues there. But the third spaces are absolutely key to us for creating that ecosystem. Because we have cafes and restaurants and gym and all those kind of amenities. But we call it the kind of bumper car system where, you get to meet people just if you're standing in the coffee queue or whatever. And we help that along because what we do is we have, every 2 months we have a free pizza event. It's now actually being sent to people's homes, the top 20 that ask for it. And we do, we try and keep that community going because actually our third spaces now become virtual third spaces. So we have coffee drop-ins, we're having, we have focus groups, and we're having several of those a month, and they're proving really popular. Because actually, in some ways, it's easier for someone to switch on their laptop than it is for them to pop down to the shared area, because we can't do shared areas because of social distancing. So we think they're extraordinarily important. You can either do them physically, or you can do them, and now we're doing them virtually.
Right, and Carolina, how does it work in Delft?
Very similar to what Sally-Anne just discussed. So indeed, we are an industrial facility, so you need to come in. But we have an open restaurant where we have very nice coffee, where we have gym. We have different spaces to meet up. So besides the restaurant, we have open spaces just for people to talk. So connections happen really, really easy in that sense. But we also, for example, are now building a different space. We're building a bee highway. So we're putting some more greenery in our site because that's also important. It also helps to well-being. And actually, to tackle another one of the questions, we're trying to involve the community in that because we indeed need to avoid that it's us, campus, technology, kind of intimidating out there and the community on the other side. We need to make it relevant for everyone. So this is one of the things that we do. One of the thoughts that we have now is, for example, to involve high school students to help us do the gardening and the greenery, to keep the people around involved. We constantly have like neighbor evenings where we just inform them of the kind of things that we're doing because it's important to keep those spaces inside, but also connected to the outside community, that it's less science related, for example. You're still muted, Chris.
Sorry, Sylvie, sorry. I'd be interested in your reflections on that, particularly from the sort of West Philadelphia area that you introduced to us earlier, and how you engage with maybe some of that population that are less well off and less engaged in innovation in its scientific sense.
Yeah, no, that's a really great question. So University City, it's really right in the middle of an urban environment. It's not closed off to, in any way. And it's actually an area that is very diverse. Really, there are residential communities surrounding kind of where the universities are primarily African American, many low to moderate income communities, and many of which are not necessarily participating in life sciences or innovation. But there have been efforts with the university and local organizations and an organization called the West Philadelphia Skills Initiative to train people in the community around in these fields of life sciences and health, and have them be connected to the anchor institutions that are right there in their neighborhoods, these universities and hospitals that employ thousands and thousands of people. And I think that the diversity is something that really draws people to the area, and is a real asset. But it's an area where we do need to continue to do better for sure in terms of ensuring real economic participation. I would say other than that, the amenities it's rich with amenities and third spaces, and we have the Cambridge Innovation Center and the Venture Cafe, and you can just step outside and there's a lot there in terms of that, and lots of opportunities as well for workforce in terms of that as well.
Okay, the next group of questions that have come up are around sort of connectivity and the importance of these innovation hubs, be they in Harlow, Stevenage, Philadelphia, in the Netherlands, the importance of being able to connect to other innovation hubs. I think it was something that Carolina, you mentioned, and Richard, you mentioned in the context of the corridor as a whole. I mean, is it important for you to be physically connected? And if it is important for you to be physically connected, does that mean that we are very reliant on the car to help us connect between those hubs in the corridor?
Physical connection, is it needed in an age of technology, etc.? I'm not sure. I think the jury's out. We've all talked about the network and being part of this wider community. And I think that's a great place to start. We've gained as a business tremendous benefit from being part of the Innovation Corridor, One Nucleus, Uxbar, etc. Just because of there are others so much more advanced in their thinking and maturity in the operation of their parts, and we gain a lot from that. Just reflecting on society, however, and our reliance on cars. Some of the occupiers that we've been showing around, either virtually or in person, the park in recent months. One of the biggest issues is their space only comes with X number of car park spaces, and they are all saying that's not good enough. I see some of the other questions are talking about sustainability and housing. What is fantastic about this region is the number of new homes that are being created and the investment that is going into public transport. And I think for Harlow and others, it will be a tremendous benefit for people to be able to simply walk or share journeys or cycle to their places of work. I think that's tremendous, not only for the environment, etc., but also for their own well-being and the quality of their lives. So I think the jury is very much out in terms of physical connectivity between them, but in terms of networking and then events, and we can have a network of shared locations and things like this. I mean, Christ, who'd think we'd have 200 people on a call like this? Why can't we get that collaboration going between the science park communities to share that on an ongoing basis? Just like Sally Ann was talking about the virtual thing before. Let's do it broader than their own parks. Let's share it amongst a much wider community.
And Carolina and Sylvie, is there a need for that connectivity between the hubs in your cities, or is it something that can function digitally?
What I can say is, physical proximity definitely lowers the threshold. So it enables more sort of spontaneous connection. That being said, if the intention is there, it shouldn't be a limitation. So that's one of the reasons why I thought this platform was great, because I think we all, as hubs, we share similar challenges and we can learn so much from each other. So if the intention is there, there is no need for physical proximity. We can still learn online. It lowers the threshold a bit, indeed.
Yeah. And Sylvie?
Yeah, I think that certainly the pandemic has probably really fast-tracked, maybe that proximity isn't as important as we might have once thought. I would say that historically, both in the city, I think it's been important, and because certainly there's clustering that happens, but even, I saw there was a question about Boston. We partner very closely with Boston, and we're a 45-minute flight from Boston. And I think, having New York and Boston nearby, where there's a lot more venture capital, that's actually helpful. People can jump on a, in our case, because of the Northeast Corridor, there's a lot of trains and, as well that happens. So there, you can jump on a train and get there and come back in a half a day. And I think that has been helpful in terms of accessing more resources and broadening our reach. But perhaps that will all look different after this. I think it probably will change a lot.
Okay. I was going to ask you about your competition with Boston, but I'm glad to hear you collaborating. I've got one final question I wanted to ask from a personal point of view, actually, of Anthony. Sorry, Sylvie, I beg your pardon?
Healthy competition.
Good.
And collaboration.
Well, the final question I wanted to ask was just to Anthony and Tatiana, as those people who are probably, for want of a better term, closest to the money on this call. We've talked a lot about softer, maybe less tangible things, about sustainability, about connectivity of people, about amenity, about free pizza. Are these all things that you and your organisations are prepared to back because you see value down the line? Is that something that you can actually start to see now in your returns and your sort of commercial forecasts?
Absolutely. Sorry, I'll let you go, Anthony, please.
Not at all. I think we're both about to say absolutely. So we're in agreement, at least that far. No, I mean, I think to create the kinds of places we've been discussing, it's a lot. You've got to have long-term vision and commitment. It's a long haul, and if you're going to build for success, then you've got to create the kind of environments which people are not only seeking today, but you've also got to try and stay ahead of the game. And actually, nobody's got a crystal ball, but try and frankly second guess the kinds of places people may want in the future. So you've got to remain agile. You've got to keep thinking about people. And that actually isn't just about coffee and pizza. Obviously, that's keeping people fed and watered is key. But also, I think the discussion about forms of tenure. So, on what basis do people occupy space? How do you monetize these relationships? I think there's a whole raft of subsidiary topics which sit behind this. Tatiana?
Okay. Tatiana?
Listen, I agree, and I think it's really important to understand that the community that's going to be there isn't just going to be there for the 5 to 10 years. It's about building a community that's going to stay there. That's how the money works. We don't want to just sort of see something that looks fantastic on year 1, year 5, and then by year 10 it's looking a bit tired, and then everyone goes off because actually it's a little box. No, what we need to do is really invest in the infrastructure and the local communities. We need to invest in schools, in healthcare, in all of these things, and it's vital that the local authorities, the local government are there to really try and maximize the input that the investors can give, including the money that they can have, and that they can direct the money where it's needed, because they will understand what the community needs. And we really need to remember that, because going to work is one thing, and whether or not we're working from home, which is obviously what we're doing at the moment, but I know that I, for one, I can't wait to get back to the office and back to seeing people on a daily basis. And yes, whether it's the pizza and the coffee, but also knowing that, oh, actually, I've got to pop out now to the doctors. It's a few minutes that way, or there's a new school that's opening and it's going to be there. I want everything that's around me. It doesn't have to be, oh, well, I need to go to the next town or to the next location. So I just think it's really important. We need to look at these not as just these huge sort of square block spaces, but as spaces where there's going to be life in community for years to come.
What a nice way to finish. That's very positive. Thank you very much from my point of view. It's been an absolute thrill to fly around the world with you all. Very exciting, lots for me to think about. I'm going to hand back to Anne now just to finish off the session. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Chris, and thank you, everybody, particularly for staying on the video conference, the webinar for so long. It's really been great to hear people talk about building communities. We can only do that through collaboration, as you've all said. And as we've demonstrated today, staying connected, even if you have to do it virtually, is a wonderful thing to connect Harlow and Stevenage and Delft and Philadelphia just by the internet is terrific, and to share that learning and stay in touch with each other in these difficult times. Thank you all the panelists for the information you've given us. This has been recorded, and the slides and information will be available on the website for people. So again, thank you for sharing that and making it available to us, because we will learn from that. So if you missed anything, or if you didn't have your question answered, apologies, but I think Chris will and Ross will pick up some of those questions, and you can be in touch individually with the panelists. So Ross, thank you very much. Thanks again to you, Chris, for chairing, and thanks to all our panelists. Stay safe and stay well, and let's keep collaborating. Thank you.